On the summit of Mount Hermon, 9,232 feet above sea level, there is a roofless stone temple. No tourists, no signs, the highest ancient temple ever documented on Earth. In 1870, a British engineer removed a 2-ton stone from that temple, broke it in half, and shipped it to London. It sat in a crate for 14 years before anyone translated it. When they finally did, the inscription described an oath, a departure from that exact summit. And there is a book, excluded from your Bible, canonical in Ethiopia for over 2,000 years, found in 11 copies at the Dead Sea, that names this mountain specifically. It says something almost no one talks about, not just what happened here. What was supposed to happen before everything went wrong, that is where this story starts. The mountain sits at the convergence of 3 modern borders, Syria, Lebanon, Israel. Its highest peak is under Syrian military control. The southern slopes are under Israeli authority following 1967. The summit is not accessible to the general public. What stands at the top is Qasr Antar, a rectangular stone building on an oval stone plateau, no roof, no interior furnishings, no clear record of its original function. Scholars confirm it dates to the Roman period. Beyond that, the picture gets murky fast. Sir Charles Warren documented the structure in December 1869. He described what he found, removed the limestone stele, broke it into pieces, and brought it down. The stone ended up in the British Museum. For 14 years it was not translated. When it finally was, in 1903, the inscription read something close to this. According to the command of the greatest and holy God, those who take an oath proceed from here. Read that again slowly. Not those who worship here. Not those who pray here. Those who take an oath proceed from here. It is a departure instruction. Someone is being sent from this place, from the top of this mountain, after swearing something. That is a strange thing to carve into a stone and place at the highest point of the highest ancient temple in the world. And it would be a strange coincidence if there were not a very specific ancient text that describes exactly that sequence of events at this exact mountain. The text is called the Book of Enoch. Specifically, the Book of the Watchers, chapters 1 through 36 of what scholars call First Enoch. It was not included in the Bible most people know. It is not a medieval forgery. The oldest sections have been dated by scholars to the 3rd and 2nd centuries before the Common Era. 11 Aramaic manuscript copies were found at Qumran Cave 4 among the Dead Sea Scrolls. 11 copies. For comparison, only 1 copy of Chronicles was found there. Only 2 of Joshua. The community that preserved the Dead Sea Scrolls treated this text as essential reading, and when the New Testament was being written, 2 of its authors referenced it directly, one by direct quotation, one by borrowing its precise framework for describing cosmic punishment. The Book of Enoch exists. It is old. It survived. And the book that was excluded from your canon names this mountain, in chapter 6, by name. Here is what the text says, and pay attention to how it says it. 200 beings called Watchers descend on the summit of Mount Hermon in the days of Jared. The text names their leader, Shemiaza. It records his specific fear before the descent, that if the plan fails, he alone will be blamed. So he demands a collective oath. Everyone swears. Everyone shares the guilt. No one can walk away. And then, and this is where the text does something no symbolic passage needs to do, it explains the name of the mountain. It says they called it Mount Hermon because they swore and bound themselves there by mutual imprecations. The Hebrew root behind the name Hermon is Haram. The word means ban, curse, forbidden. The mountain is named the Forbidden, and according to the text, it was named that because of what was sworn on its summit before 200 beings descended. One detail could be literary flourish. Fine. 2 could be coincidence. But a named physical location, a wordplay embedded in the text explaining why the location has that name, a specific number of participants, a named leader, a psychological motive for the collective oath, and a matching inscribed stone found centuries later at that exact summit, that is not how symbolic passages usually behave. But the oath is not what this video is about. The descent is not the thing most people miss. What most people skip entirely is what the text says these beings were before they came down. What their assigned function was. Because the Book of Enoch does not just describe a crime, it describes the job that was abandoned. And the job description is where this story becomes something else entirely. In chapter 15 of 1st Enoch, God speaks directly to Enoch after hearing his petition on behalf of the imprisoned watchers. And God does not merely pronounce judgment. God identifies the exact nature of the transgression in terms of role. The sentence is direct, and it is still sitting in the text right now. You should intercede for men and not men for you. That is not a moral statement. That is a job reversal. The watchers were assigned to intercede for humanity, to advocate, to stand between the divine and the human and speak on the human's behalf. That was their function. Their name in the original Aramaic iron means literally those who are awake, those who watch. It is a functional title. It describes a stationed role, a guard and monitoring assignment with a specific intercession responsibility. In the Aramaic, the title carries the weight of a deployment. When Greek translators later rendered the text, they used the word angels. The Aramaic title disappeared, and with it went the specific function it described. This matters enormously, because the crime becomes a different thing when you understand the role. They were not only angelic beings who fell due to lust. They were assigned intercessors, who abandoned humanity, the very beings they were dispatched to advocate for, and then descended to corrupt those same humans. The protectors became the predators. The text documents both ends of that transformation, and the place where the transformation began has a name, and that name means the forbidden. And there is a stone found there that says something about an oath and a departure. God continues in chapter 15. The logic of the punishment turns on the original assignment. I did not make wives for you, because the dwelling of the spiritual ones is heaven. This is not condemnation of desire in general. This is God identifying the violation in terms of station. They had a post. Their station was not earthly. They left a position that was not designed for physical habitation and crossed into physical existence in the most permanent way possible. They took wives. They produced offspring. They embedded themselves in the world they were sent to watch over. And then they taught those humans things the humans were not supposed to have yet. Chapter 8. Named teachers. Named subjects. Azazel taught men how to make swords, shields, and breastplates. He revealed the metals of the earth and how to work them. Other watchers taught sorcery, the reading of roots, astrology, meteorology. One watcher, Penemu, taught humanity to write with ink on paper. God's rebuke in chapter 16 does not soften this detail. God says, "You have been in heaven, but all the mysteries had not yet been revealed to you, and you knew worthless ones. And these in the hardness of your hearts you have made known to the women." They did not pass on the full curriculum of divine knowledge. They passed on partial, premature information, things they themselves did not fully possess, like soldiers revealing classified material they had only partial clearance to know. And that partial knowledge, released before its time, cascaded into something the text describes as catastrophic. The offspring were the Nephilim, the giants. The text says the earth cried out under their violence. And then the text does something that most readers overlook, and most theologians have never fully incorporated into mainstream doctrine. Chapter 15, verses 8 through 11. When the Nephilim die, their spirits do not go to a prison below. They remain on earth. On earth shall be their dwelling. The spirits of the giants, born from the union of watchers and human women, become what the text calls evil spirits, spirits that afflict, oppress, destroy, attack, and cause trouble, and they stay here. They were not sent below. The text is precise about this. They were left in the place where they were born. Now, the New Testament authors did not explain this tradition when they wrote about unclean spirits. They did not explain it because their readers already knew it. From Enoch, from the text that was later removed from most canonical traditions. When the author of Jude refers to the angels who did not keep their proper domain, but left their own abode, that is not creative paraphrase. It is a direct summary of the Watcher narrative. And when the author of 2 Peter, reaching for language to describe where these beings were imprisoned, used the word tartarosas, a word that appears nowhere else in the entire New Testament, borrowed from Greek mythology where Tartarus was the subterranean prison of the Titans, he was not making a random poetic choice. He was plugging into a tradition his audience already had. a tradition they had from Enoch. From the book that was excluded, the Watchers asked Enoch to carry their petition to God. They could not approach him themselves, so a human wrote the appeal for them. A mortal interceded for the beings who were supposed to intercede for mortals. The roles were perfectly, brutally reversed. And Enoch took the petition, carried it to the throne, waited, and the answer came back. No peace, no forgiveness. You were spirits of heaven. You left your station for the flesh. You corrupted the ones you were sent to protect. You taught them things you were not authorized to know. And now the only one who could carry your appeal was one of them. Now go back to the stone. The Qasr Antar stele is in the British Museum right now. The inscription reads, "Those who take an oath proceed from here." Scholar George Nicholsberg formally connected this inscription to the oath scene in 1 Enoch chapter 6. The divine title on the stone, the greatest and holy God, closely parallels the Enochic title for God, the Great Holy One. That parallel is real. Nicholsberg made the connection carefully, and other scholars have noted it. Here is what honest scholarship also says. The stele was likely carved in the 3rd to 5th centuries of the Common Era. It postdates the composition of 1 Enoch by several centuries. That matters. It means the inscription does not confirm the Watcher's oath as a historical event. What it may confirm is that someone, centuries after 1 Enoch was written, built a structure at this summit and inscribed a pillar about an oath and a departure on the same mountain the text names as the descent point, using language that parallels the same text. That could mean the Roman-era builders were aware of the tradition. It could mean the site was already associated with oath rituals from a separate regional tradition. Scholars disagree. What is not in dispute is that the stone is real, the mountain is real, the inscription is real, and the text names this specific place with a specific word-based explanation for why it bears this specific name. Now go one step higher. Since 1974, the United Nations Disengagement Observer Force UNDOF has maintained a permanent position on Mount Hermon. The United Nations' own documentation identifies this as the highest permanently manned UN position in the world. The force is called an observer force. It was established to watch the border between Israeli-occupied territory and Syria from this exact peak. And the Aramaic name for the beings in 1 Enoch Iron means those who are awake, those who watch. Their assigned function was to observe, guard, and report. The modern agency occupying that summit is an observation force. None of that proves the text is literal. It does not. But the mountain is named the Forbidden. The text says watchers were stationed there, and the modern military and international body that has occupied that summit since 1974 is formally designated an observer force. You can dismiss the irony. That is fair. What is harder to dismiss is the manuscript evidence. 11 copies at Qumran. The fragments cover roughly 1/5 of the full text. The complete version survived only in the Ethiopic translation, which came from Greek, which came from Aramaic. At each stage of transmission, something changed. The most significant, the Aramaic word iron, that functional deployment title meaning those who are awake, was rendered as angels in Greek and stayed angels in Ethiopic. The job title vanished. And the job title was the whole point. A soldier and an angel are both beings who serve. They are not the same thing. When iron became angels, the specific function of watching, guarding, and interceding was buried inside a more general category. The crime was still recorded. The job description was softened. And the UNESCO tentative heritage listing for Qasr Antar states it plainly. There is what they call a deplorable lack of comprehensive study into the history, archaeology, and architecture of the site. The full excavation has never been completed. The summit is under military control. What is beneath the floor of that roofless temple has never been systematically investigated. This is the pattern the text has produced. It names a mountain. The mountain exists. It explains the name with a word embedded in the oath. Scholars debate, but do not dismiss the etymology. It lists the participants, their leader, their motive, their mechanism. It describes the original function the participants were abandoning. It names what they taught and to whom. It describes the consequence of their hybrid offspring in spatial terms that are precise enough to be disturbing. The New Testament quotes it. The New Testament borrows its terminology. The book itself was excluded from canon but survived in more copies at Qumran than several canonical texts. A stone was found at the summit with an inscription about an oath. That stone is in London. The summit has never been fully excavated. Now consider what one detail needs to carry if this is purely symbolic. A symbolic vision does not need a named mountain. It does not need a wordplay on the name of that mountain to explain why the name exists. It does not need 19 named leaders. It does not need a specific psychological mechanism, the collective oath, to prevent one person from bearing all the blame that reflects actual group decision dynamics. It does not need God's rebuke to name the specific function that was violated. It does not need the precise spatial claim that the spirits of the dead offspring remain here, on earth, as the origin of what later tradition will call evil spirits. One of those details could be literary texture. 3 could be sophisticated narrative craft, all of them together, converging on a named place that still physically exists, where a stone was found with a matching inscription, and where the ground has never been fully excavated. That is a problem for the purely symbolic reading. Not a disproof of it. A problem. The official explanation may still be correct. This may be a brilliant, ancient theological narrative using geographic and organizational detail to give moral and cosmic weight to the origin of evil. That reading is defensible. Scholars hold it, and they hold it for good reasons. But the symbolic reading explains the purpose of the story. It does not explain why the physical details keep behaving like geography. It does not explain why the mountain was named. It does not explain why the job description was included and then returned to in the judgment speech. It does not explain why the text felt it necessary to specify where the spirits of the dead Nephilim were assigned to remain. The text did not pick a vague high place. It picked this mountain. It named it. It explained the name. It gave the number, the leader, the motive, the oath, the knowledge transfer, the consequence, the original function, the reversal, and the judgment. A stone from the summit is now behind glass in London and says something about an oath and a departure. The floor of the temple at the top of that mountain has never been dug. The text has not changed. Only the interpretation did. And that is the problem. Because the mountain is still there, the stone is still in London, and God's question to the watchers, still in the text, exactly where it was placed, is still the most disturbing line in the whole account. Not because of what it accuses them of, because of what it reveals about what they were. Wherefore have ye left the high, holy, and eternal heaven? They had a station, they had a function, they had a post, and on a mountain whose name still carries the root word for forbidden, they chose to leave it. The roofless temple is still there, empty, snow, cold, militarily controlled. The floor never excavated. The stele in a glass case, thousands of miles away, in London. The text says, those who were supposed to speak for you came down here instead. And the stone at the summit says, those who take an oath proceed from here.